started writing about human rights, writing about Argentina in the late 70s, when I was in college, actually. And these things have a way of not going away. I mean, I agree very much with what Jamil just said. I think the issue isn't only universal jurisdiction here. There are cases in other countries that we're going to hear more about. This isn't going to just evaporate. The second point you made was about John Yoo, and I want to be very clear about what I said. I did not say that because there are others who wrote other memos, there were a lot of other people involved, that attention should not be paid to him by both the board, the Bar Association of Pennsylvania, and by the university. I'm not saying that at all. I am saying that there are real questions of due process here that are real. They're not ridiculous. They are real things, and such a process needs to be fair and have the resources involved to actually do a full inquiry. Professor Cole gave you a sense of whose responsibility it ultimately is. But I certainly am not sitting here saying, gee, other people were involved, forget about that. I don't agree with that. I've never said that. And, I hope the process continues and there is an investigation. I think it's just the proper thing to do. That's all. I don't think it's actually all that. That question isn't that complicated. How you do it raises complications, but I think they're complications the university can cope with. The evidence up to now is they haven't made any attempt to do so.
We're up against our time boundary. I do want to give the panel at least a concluding statement, if anyone would like to make. Any of you? Any comment? Jamil?
This isn't a concluding statement, but it's just a suggestion so it seems like there are a lot of people out there who are frustrated by the lack of a mechanism here at Bolt to reckon with one of your professors' responsibility for what took place over the last decade. And I'm thinking about these French intellectuals who had the same problem with respect to their government's involvement in Algeria. And what they did is they just held their own trial. They just put together their own mechanism, and they said, we're going to have this person argue one side and this other person argue the other side, and we're going to have this jury. And it's something that you could do. You could put it together yourselves. And obviously you don't have any official you're not going to have any enforcement power, but enforcement power in the end is only a part of this, and part of it is just having the debate and getting the arguments out there, and giving people a chance to sort of make their own decision about who was responsible and to what extent and what ought to be done about it.
Go ahead, Mark.
It should be said that these issues, fully 50 years later, more than that, are still vivid in France. And when a few years ago, General Osiris, a decorated military officer, published a little brilliant book called The Battle of the Kasbah about the torture that he had participated in, among other things. He was, to his surprise, widely denounced, suffered the loss of his rank and all sorts of other indignities.
Loss of pension also.
Loss of pension as well. Fascinating controversy and worth looking at. The book itself is admirably blunt and fascinating and makes a perfect sort of pendant to the Battle of Algiers. My last comment here is I'm glad that students, those who are interested in this. I say again, I think it's enormously important. Quite apart from the inquiries, I mean, this isn't at all about Professor Yoo. It's about what the government did and the responsibility that we as Americans still bear to look into this, repudiate it, sort it out, because our government did it. And as a matter of fact, we've known about it for 8 years. So one of my problems with talking so much about Professor Yoo is simply that we make him into the sole case, and he absolutely is not. And I just would make a plea again for the fact that these documents in this case should be studied and understood in this institution. There's no better place, it seems to me, for that kind of study and debate, because I think it teaches one, it certainly has taught me, about the responsibilities of lawyers and the ultimate centrality of the law. And we're left with that question.
Dr. Barrigo, Dr. Cole, final?
Well, go ahead.
Well, in our struggle in the American Psychological Association, one problem we always come up with is that we aren't lawyers, and in order to proceed, we also always need legal help. Okay. So you folks at least have that tool to start with.
Very good. Bob?
Well, I don't want to ask a kind of a dampening question, but it has puzzled me all along why it is that, I mean, the two of you who spoke may have an answer there. Why do so many students take Professor Yu's course? Why are they so fully attended and so on? I'm not saying, this isn't an argument with you, I don't understand the student mentality.
Thank you very much for coming. It's wonderful that you were here today. But I think that the argument, in trying to get people to sign our petitions last year, we heard arguments from people. Lots of them didn't want to sign it because they said, look, this is what lawyers do. They make arguments and, justify, they think it's okay that he was justifying a policy. And this is what actually frightens me. That's why we were pushing for this class. And in the class, we will be going over the torture members as part of that. The ethics of government lawyers, or ethics for government employers, that's the point of that class. It's not going to be the entire class, but I fully agree with you. It's not just about John Yu. It's just the fact that he's here means we have to address that. I can't ignore the fact that he's here. So,
Thank you very much.
but people, I think that's what I'm most concerned about is that these are young lawyers being trained to think that this is what lawyers do and this is acceptable, and I don't think it is. So this is a problem.
We have two other students.
Other students, we are against our time boundary. Keep your comments very, very curt, please. We must leave.
Okay, two constitutional law courses being taught this semester, both in different time slots. If you need to take common law this semester and it only fits in that time slot, you're going to take John Yu's course. I'm not taking his course that's relevant to my field of interest next semester as a moral judgment, and I think that lots of people do make that moral judgment, just not the majority.
Okay, very quickly, what do you want?
I just want to say that...
No, the man behind.
Oh, so sorry.
Hi, my name is Jeffrey Stevens. I'm co-directing a film called Does Torture Work, which is about the effectiveness of torture. I recently interviewed Darius Rejali. I don't know if any of you know who he is. He's written a book called Torture Democracy. The focus of our film is on how torture functions in a democracy, particularly paying attention to the history of torture in terms of the Philippine-American War from 1899 to 1902, which is an unknown war where the Americans engaged in waterboarding, as well as the Algerian War. One of the things that Darius Rejali said, which is sort of for the guys on the left, is that there's four professions that seem to be really vulnerable to torture. There's military, police, psychologists, and lawyers who get pulled into issues of torture. I'll be very brief here, but I have a lot of questions with regards to, we're not going to be able to pursue accountability because we have a brief time span, which is moving beyond us, but how the ACLU might proactively think about the next time this comes up. But in terms of the John Yu case, something that had occurred to me was in the 1950s, the university had people sign a loyalty oath that they weren't communists, etc. We did talk briefly about Donald Rumsfeld having been served with an indictment in Belgium. How many know that he was also served with an indictment in France? That was in 2007, and he was spirited into the American embassy, and then most likely sent to Ramstein Air Force Base, and then back into the U.S. And so I think something that might prove effective in terms of UC faculty, because I'm very much in favor of academic freedom, is to think possibly about having faculty sign an oath that says, I realize that foreign travel and foreign conferences are an important part of my work, and I agree to sign an affidavit that says, should I go to a foreign country, I am not at risk of indictment. Because I think that in the case of John Yu, that would not be true. Have you thought about that, Robert Cole?
This is your last comment. Go.
I don't think we want to get into
Okay, very good.
emulate the loyalty oath.
I want to thank our panel. I want to thank all of you for coming. And this panel's been working for 4 hours, so give them a big hand, okay?